great. Go use these. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtotar to Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtotar to Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Oh, the water's leaking through? What to do?
Need some towels or a bucket? I don't know. It's coming down pretty good right now.
Oh my gosh. Maybe run upstairs and get one of the boys. No, those doors.
It's like it's inside more than it's coming down from inside, not from the door, but from more. Like a lot. I wonder if it's because the water's hitting this, is coming this way or
Yeah, it's sliding through this thing. Here. You see that? Yeah. It's sliding through here. No. This is broken, and I think the seal is broken. And that's why the water is sliding through. Yeah.
There's a lot of water. We just have to look at that. It's a lot of water. Okay. Just worked up. Oh, yeah. There's some kind of leak up here. Yeah. Okay. Well, for the small down.
I think he's a little embarrassed about part of the Bhagavatam reading.
Did we cover a specific verse? Yeah, this morning.
Not the whole pastime. I'll explain to you later. Anyway. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So on this 21st day of March 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Now before I guess, 26? Yeah, okay. So we're reading chapter 13, Nature of the Enjoyer in Consciousness, text number 26 on page 558. Anye tu evam ajanantah shudvanebhya upasate te api Chatitaranti eva mrityum shuti parayanaha annetvevam ajananta shutvanebhya upasate tepi chatitarantyeva mrityum shuti parayanaha Annetvevam ajananta Shutvanebhya upasate Tepi chatatarantyeva Mrityum shuti parayana Annetvevam ajananta Shutvanebhya upasate Tepi chatatarantyeva Mrityum shuti parayana. Oh, page 558. Yeah. Go ahead, Vrindavan, you start. Annetvevam ajananta Shudvanebhya upasate Chepita titarantyeva Mrityum shruti parayana Annetvevam ajananta Shutvanebhya upasate Deva Mrityum shruti parayana Annetvevam ajanantah Shutvanebhya upasate Tepi chatitarantyeva Mrityum shruti parayana. Go ahead. Annetvevam ajanantah Shudvanebhya upasate Tepi chatitarantyeva mrityum shruti-parayanaha
Anye tvevam janantah
anye tvevam ajanantah
Shrutvanebhya upasate
shrutvanebhya upasate
Te pichati
chepitata tarantyeva
Mrityum shruti-parayanaha
shruti-parayanaha. Anye, others too, but evam, thus, ajanantaha, without spiritual knowledge, shrutva, by hearing, anyebaha, from others, upasate, begin to worship, te, they, api, also, cha, and atitaranti, transcend, eva, certainly, mrityum, the path of death, shruti parayanaha, inclined to the process of hearing. Translation. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Purport. This verse is particularly applicable to modern society, because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there's no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing, because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress, especially, according to Lord Chaitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization, and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this is one of the many verses in the Bhagavad Gita and also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it's a great, I don't want to say concession, but it's an opportunity for we who are not yogis, who haven't spent 20 years in an ashram or in performing severe austerities, all these things that sometimes seem to be prerequisite, but the real prerequisite in this practice, especially bhakti yoga, following the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is this eagerness to hear. And it's characterized by this word, shushusho, which has within it hearing, the hearing process, like shruti obviously is in there. It comes up right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the second verse. We find dharmak projadikayatavo tapadamone matsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatva vastu shivardam tapatrayon mulanam Shriman Bhagavate Mahamanikote King Vaparar Ishvara Sadjo Rujavate Takritabi Shushushabi Stachana. That Shushushabi is a variant of the Shushusho word. So what is he saying there? First he praises the Bhagavatam. It kicks out immediately all cheating religions, religions which are materially motivated up to and including liberation, according to Sridhar Swami. As Prahlad Maharaj says, mukti kama, it can be just a selfish desire to be liberated. So it kicks out that. It's understood by those who are pure at heart, who are humble. Nirmatsaranam, non-envious, satam vedyam, vastava matta vastu. This is a wonderful phrase, this vastava vastu. Means the real substance of life. You know, isn't there a philosopher, forgive me, I've completely lost touch with whatever studies I did of Western philosophy, but was someone who was talking about the ground of being. Does that ring a bell with anyone? In other words, the real foundation of existence. So that's what this real deals with. Ultimately, where did everything come from? What's the source of everything? Sarva karana karana. But vastava vastama shivadam, it brings very great auspiciousness. Tapatraya unmulanam, who can say what that means? Tapatraya unmulanam? Yes, uproots the threefold misery. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamanukute. This Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled by Vyasadeva, the great Muni, in his immaturity. King Vaparaya, what more do we need? What else do you need? You don't need any more Shastra. That's it. Ishvara Sadyo Ridnyavarudyateitra. That the Lord will become compact in your heart. Shushu Shubis Takshanat. If you apply this science of Bhagavad Gita, two definitions of that: submissive oral reception and ardent hearing. And the perfect, who's the perfect exemplar for that in the Bhagavatam? Yes, King Parikshit. The whole Bhagavatam is a perfect example of hearing and chanting. Hearing from the pure, realized soul, Shukadeva Goswami, and the ardent hearer, and the other pure soul, Parikshit. So, and that circumvents everything. In other words, if you can do that right, you can achieve perfection. You don't have to worry about, sitting just like this, looking. This is the one I always love, looking at the space between the eyebrows, which I can't even do for 5 seconds. And the pranayama and all this stuff. So, I mean, even in the Bhagavad Gita, we have the same thing where Arjuna says, I can't do that, And then Krishna says, basically, you don't have to, Now hear, O Arjuna, right? The first verse, Prabhupada emphasizes that in his commentary. Maya, this is the first verse after the 6th chapter, after Arjuna was so encouraged by the last verse. The greatest of yogis are those who worship me with faith, and like that. Yoginam visarvesham madgaten antaratmana, who are me always thinking me with the heart. Antaratmana. When I take them apart, what is it? Shradhavan. Pariyopetas tema yuktadamamita. Teyomam. Shradhavan bhajate, sorry. Shradhavan bhajate yoman, who always worship me with faith. And who are Tema Yuktatamamata. They're best linked with me in devotion. So anyway, the next verse, the first verse of the 7th chapter, Krishna says, Maya Saktamana Parta Yogam Yunjan Manashaya Asangshayang Samagamamyata Gasasi Tat Chinu. Prabhupada focuses especially on that last word. Now hear from me, that's exactly what we're reading about. And he quotes a good portion. I think Shinvatam Sukata Krishna, I think he quotes it right there from the 2nd chapter, which is all about, those verses from 6 through 21. It's like 16 verses, I think. Developing a taste for hearing Krishna Katha, and then applying it, Shinvatam Sukata Krishna, Punyashavanakir Rindyataksa Yabanavidanoti Suritsatam. That Krishna in the heart, and we're just reading about Krishna in the heart as the Supersoul. Krishna in the heart, he understands when his devotee is hearing about him from a pure source with this eager hearing, eagerness to hear. And the whole previous verse is how to develop that taste for hearing, that Krishna Katha, the ruchi. So that comes from serving the pure devotee. So anyway, the whole process is culminated in that section, the last verses. In the last verse, all your knots in your heart are, this is just from hearing, in knots in your heart are cut to pieces, but no more doubts. The doubts are destroyed because you're getting vigyan of more and more seeing Krishna in the heart. And and when all your karma is eradicated, which really means you see the Lord in the heart. And Prabhupada adds, the way he understands it, interprets it, you see yourself in your original form, and you see the Lord as well. In other words, you achieve perfection just by pure hearing. So Krishna is giving that encouragement here, and this is, he gave so many others. One who understands concerning material nature, living entity, he will not take birth again, regardless of his present position. Some perceive the Supersoul within themselves through meditation, others through cultivation of knowledge, still others through working without fruit of desires. But then he says, but then there's others who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of the tendency to hear from other authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. So this is really mostly what our process is. And it's emphasized by Lord Kapila Dev in his teachings to his mother. First, right near the beginning, I'll mention this again, many of you heard it before, the Sadhu Sangashtaka. 8 verses about the importance of associating with sadhus. And what's the importance? You'll hear pure vibrations about Krishna. And within that 8 verses, I won't go into the whole thing, but he has this classic verse, Satam prasangan mama virya sambido bhavanti ritkan rasayana kata tanjoshanara shrubhavarga vartmani shraddha rati bhakti ranukramishati. Such an important verse. If one can find, and this is where the acharyas come in, and the preaching aspect, to actually make themselves available, make the books, make the sounds, make themselves available, so that those who can or are interested in hearing will be able to hear. And that's what Prabhupada did, and encouraged us to do. And the book distribution also, and publication and writing makes it, permanent. So, what does this verse say? It says, Satam prasangan. Now, it's interesting, this word prasanga. The whole 8 verses begins with the word prasanga. Prasangam majalam pasham atmanak kavayo vaduz taheva sadhashakato moksha dvaram apavatam. In this case, prasanga means very strong attachment. Ajanam pasham, just like strong ropes. Atmanak kavayo vadu. Those who are intelligent, the kavis, they understand that the soul is bound to this world through these strong attachments, the knots in the heart. Atmanak kavayo vadu. Saesha sadhashukato. So they try to transfer that attachment from the things of this world and so many ultimate varieties of sense gratifications to the sadhus. Ta'eva sadhasukato moksha dvaram apavatu. Forgive me. I put it into a little poem. Mundane affection keeps us tied to birth and death infernal, but love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. So it's personal. It becomes very personal. It's not you go alone to some mountain somewhere and you fight with your mind, You just have to find the right sangha. That was my theme of my Sunday talk. It proceeds, it's very logical. Okay, it's sadhu sangha, obviously. Who's the sadhu? Then he describes Tatiksha Bhakarunita. Here's how you can recognize the sadhus. They are very tolerant, very merciful. They have no enemies. They're friendly to all. Self-control like that. How did they get that way? By practicing pure devotion. Mayanannena bhavine bhaktim kurvanti yedvidham. So, what do? Manashaya kratamrishta. They're always hearing and chanting the delightful vibrations of my name, form, qualities, and pastimes. Manashaya. In this case, ashaya means sound vibrations that have taken shelter of Krishna. Manashaya kratamrishta. Mishta means very delightful. Shunvanti katayanti cha. Everyone knows what that means, right? Hearing, chanting. And because of that, they don't feel the material miseries very much. Tapanti bhavrastapa naitad mangata chetasa, because their minds are so absorbed in me by being attracted by these name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna, that they'll feel there's some problem with the body and so forth, but it doesn't overwhelm their consciousness, and they can often transcend it entirely. It goes on like that. So then he has a summary. Search out these sadhus, because by their associate, the basic, sadhus who don't have any material attachment, and by associating with them, you will be able to eradicate the faults of previous bad attachment, which can stretch over lifetimes. And Prabhupada actually focuses on this in the purport. Those who are familiar with chapter 15 will be coming up soon, in a few weeks. After the first introductory verse, it's all about the upside-down banyan tree, how this world is, the roots are up and the branches are down, and all. How do you cut that tree down? Through detachment, and the sword of detachment. But that's not all. Then you have to immediately surrender to the Lord. And how do you do that? Then there's a verse describing that. Nirmana moha jita sangha dosha. You conquer over bad effects of bad association. Jita sangha dosha. Anyway, it goes on like that. And ultimately it comes to this verse, Satam Prasangan, in this Sadhu Sangashtaka. It's a key verse. So, notice that the word is the same. Pasangam Majaram Pasham. There, it's powerful attachments to the thing of this world. They're like ropes. But Satam Prasangan means meaningful, intense association with pure devotees. That's what Satam Prasangan. It's not just Sangha, it's Prasanga. Satam Prasangan. And what will you experience? You'll hear pure sound vibration. Mama Virya Sambido, conversations about my glorious activities. Kapila Dev speaking, he's Krishna. Mama Virya Sambido, and it's not some bitter medicine. Bhavanti Rit Karna Rasayana Kataya. It's a life-giving elixir for the heart and the ear. Mama Virya, Satam Mama Virya, Bhavanti Rit Karna. Yeah, for the eye, for the ear, and for the heart. Ritkarna Rasayana Kata. And following this process, Joshanad, quickly, you don't have to wait too long. Ashu, which is Apavargavartmani, a path of liberation. What happens? Your Shraddha, Ratir, Bhakti, Anukramishati. Your faith, your attraction, and your love for Krishna develop step by step very nicely. And then the next verse, I won't get into the last two verses in detail, but one line he has there, this is the easiest process of yoga. I forget what the word he uses at the end of the one. Just by applying this easy process of yoga, one can perfect one's life. So much of the Bhagavatam is based on that, as I pointed out. It's just a series of conversations. And you apply, the more that you apply your intelligence and you focus hearing, and of course discussing, studying, understanding, that's the easiest process, and it's most practical for us in this age. And the whole thing is concentrated. The concentrated is Sankirtan, hearing the holy name with full attention and devotion, and chanting with full attention and devotion, enthusiasm. That's the process, and so it's all distilled into that, but it also expands into all this. You look at Lord Chaitanya, they had long kirtans, but they also had so much wonderful conversations and sharing of Bhagavatam, and of course other, Gita Govinda, Karnamrita, so many things. So, we'll go on, unless there's some discussion on these points. Shruti Parayana, dedicated to hearing. Narayana Parayana, have you ever heard of that one? Parayana means dedicated, fully dedicated to Narayan, or in this case, Shruti Parayana, fully dedicated to hearing. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Hi,
I just want to make sure that I understand correctly. You said the sadhu doesn't have any enemy. So I tend to think highly realized souls, they have a lot of enemies, like look at Jesus Christ, or because they, of course,
This is a little trick of language. Let me explain.
Go against the power. But you mean,
Yes.
you explain it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you understand.
Yeah.
It's one of the pitfalls of the English language. But what's meant by this is that they have no enmity toward others, although others may have enmity to them, and Jesus Christ is the perfect example. Because they're, or Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad, I mean, after everything Hiranyakashipu did, you know, to try to kill Prahlad, he couldn't do it. And then, of course, he was killed himself. But Prahlad was praying to Nrsimhadev, can you please save my father, you know, like that. Forgive him. And he said, don't worry, you know, because you're a pure devotee, so many generations before I was forgetting, so many generations after. And we find that that includes demons, such as Bali Maharaj, who was born as a demon, but he really wasn't a demon. He turns out to be, you know, the epitome of Atma-nivedana. That pastime of Vamanadev, you know, and even Banasura, who was another descendant of Prahlad. He wasn't a great devotee. He was an asura. But when it came down to it, and his daughter was it Usha and Aniruddha? I think it was Usha. And they were having an affair right in the inner wings of the palace, because Usha had a girlfriend who had mystic powers and she could travel. It's quite a story. She was dreaming of some boy. She didn't know who it was. So this, I forget her name now, but her friend was an artist. He said, well, you just describe it and I'll start drawing. And when I get to the one who it was, you'll tell me who it was. So he's drawing this, drawing that. I said, no, no, no. Finally he draws one of Krishna's grandsons, I think it is, anyway. And said, that's him. You know, she was embarrassed. Said, okay, just wait here. She had power, she could fly, you know, she could go through so she went and she took Aniruddha back and deposited him there. And they're in the inner, you know, they have all these guards to protect her from any boys, you know, but they flew right in the middle of the palace, and they're having this affair right in the middle of the palace, and finally her guards are looking at her and just says, she looks like she's having an affair with somebody, you know, there were signs. And so they tell Banasura, and he's freaked out, you know, what is this? And so at great effort they arrest him, because he's one of Krishna's sons. He's a great fighter, but you know, they got all these. So he's arrested now. So, you know, everyone finds out, so Krishna and the whole armies come to rescue him. So there's a battle. Ultimately, Krishna fights with Banasura. Now, Banasura was a great devotee of Shiva, and Shiva blessed him. He blessed him with 1,000 arms. And he played the drum, I guess with, you know, drums in perfect time. So Shiva was dancing. He's a famous dancer. You know, he has a Tandava Nritya. So Shiva was very pleased. And but Banasura was complaining, I have all these arms, but I have no one to fight with, you know. So Shiva was chastising him, you know, that you'll get someone to fight with soon. Well, I have to. So he started banging. You know, he was fighting with the mountains. He would, you know, he was frustrated. So anyway, what happens is that Krishna comes, and ultimately he's fighting with the Shiva Dwara. Shiva comes to aid Banasura, and he sends his Dwara. Dwara is like a weapon, and it's also like means fever. So it's the Shiva Dwara against the Narayan Dwara, Krishna's weapon. They were fighting. Narayan Dwara is the cold weapon. The Shiva Dwara is the heat weapon, and the cold weapon wins. You know, the Shiva Dwara is defeated. So, therefore, you know, Banasura doesn't have his defender anymore, so Krishna starts fighting with Banasura, but he doesn't kill him. He just chops off 996 arms, so he's a little more humble. He has 4 arms left. And by that time he says, okay, you can, my daughter, you can marry her, that's very nice, you know, a good couple. So he gives it and the marriage takes place. So anyway, so back to hearing. The whole process is culminated. It's founded on hearing. I mean, there's hearing, chanting, remembering. There's all of the 9 processes. But all of them are meant to be pervaded by hearing, chanting, and remembering. The whole thing culminates in remembering. And here Krishna is saying, there are others besides the yogis and those who meditation and cultivation of knowledge and so forth, working without fruit of results, who are inclined to hear, and they also transcend Chatataranteva, this bet, they transcend death, the world of birth and death, because they're dedicated to hearing. So this is open for us. We can do that. We should try to do it. All right, let's go on.
Hare Krishna. So I have a question.
Oh, please.
Yeah, so result of successful hearing is ability to remember and to tell it again to someone else.
The result of what?
Successful hearing is the...
Well, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So the hearing is the basis. Then, yeah, it helps.
But what are some of the things that can get in the way of our hearing, especially if it comes to hearing class, for instance?
We all have our own private list of those things. But it's latent attractions that we haven't. We're not serious about, expunging from our heart. What generally or offenses, and you can see that offenses also include that. I mean, what's the last offense? Maintaining attachment to material things, even after understanding so many instructions about this matter. So. It's our weakness of heart. Weakness of heart means, I tried, but it's just too hard. Or I'm trying, but not this lifetime. I think, I'll take it easy. So that's, I think we can all understand what that is. It's kind of obvious after a while, what we have to work on. And if we can really focus on some special attachment and give it up, then that's a victory. But you can see the potency of the process. Just to become serious about Krishna consciousness, chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regular principles. That in itself should encourage us. Well, it's possible. It's possible. I came that far. If I gave up A, B, C, and D, those were hard enough. What about, E should be possible, and why not even F, G, H? So it's a project, and it's like, what's the reward? The reward right away. I know long-term reward is going back to Godhead, liberation, fine. But what about day to day? Day to day is that if you can refine your devotional service and work on the things that are blockages, everything will be more tasty. You'll develop more and more ruchi. This is how the chanting is so sweet. You'll really want to go to the kirtan melas and really absorb yourself more, and it'll all be total nectar. Whereas if that's not the case, you can even find excuses where you don't have time to attend the kirtans, even in the temple if you live in the temple. I just got whatever. So it's that's the idea, is that it's something you introspect. You can see the process is so clear and given, nectar of instruction you can read, and the obstacles that we should. What is that? There is that verse. I forget it. Tannam rupi charitari sukirtananu smityo kumena vasanama nasini yoja. Tishtan Vrajeta Danuragi Jananugami Kalang Niyeta Kilamitchu Badeshasaram. This is why I miss Ross. Ross knew the first 7 verses of the Nectar of Instruction. Yeah, he memorized them. And I told him, when it first came out, we used to chant those back in '79 in New York every morning after the Bhagavatam class. Not all of them, just I think the first 7. But so this verse says, Tan Namaru, the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna are sweet, just like sugar candy. But those who are afflicted with, and probably would always use the word jaundice to mean hepatitis. But anyway, we'll go with that. But those who are afflicted with the disease of jaundice, which is a symptom of hepatitis, it tastes bitter. We don't get, the sweetness isn't there. But isn't it wonderful that if you keep practice chanting and hearing every day, that gradually the disease is destroyed at its root, the disease of ignorance, and the sweetness returns and everything becomes very tasty. And so you don't have to, it's not a great austerity to chant the holy name. You don't want to stop. It's so sweet. Hare Krishna, like that verse by Raghunath Das. Is it instruction to the tongue? They say, Radheti nama namasunadasi. This is what he's experiencing. He's teaching us. Radheti nama namasunadasi mugdham. Krishneti nama madurabhadagara dugdham savakshanam sadabiragahimena ramyam kritvata daiva pibamane rasane chudarte. An excellent fresh nectar drink with endless subtle tastes, such is the name of Radha, by whom all three worlds are graced. Condensed milk that is wonderfully delicious, thick and sweet, such is the name of Krishna, in whom all attractions meet. Now mix these drinks, O thirsty tongue, and add the cooling, fragrant spice of love, a prize the wise will try to buy at any price. And then at every moment drink this beverage most fine, and make my heart supremely blissful, peaceful, and divine. Yeah. There's another one like that. This is by Bilvamangal Thakur. I forget what it's called. Maybe you're familiar with it. There's like 60, 70 verses. They all end with Govinda Damodara Madhaveti. I don't know if you ever heard of it. But I worked on this book with Mukunda Dutt. He was spending some time here back in, I don't know, the late 90s, early 2000s. His mother was up in Temecula. She was like ill, and he was taking care of her, so he stayed with me. And he had this book, and editing, I was working on it. I still have it on my, I don't know if it was ever printed as a book. But one verse stood out for me, and I taught it to Bhakta Bronson, who later became Balaram Das. And he still knows it. And it's again instruction to the tongue. A much simpler, little short verse. Jive sadaiva bhadrasundarani krishnasya namani manoharani samasta bhaktati vinashanani govinda damodara madhaveti. It's really nice. I'll bring it sometime. All the verses end in those three words, the names. So it says, O tongue, jive, always sadaiva bhadrasundarani, worship the beautiful names of Krishna. Krishnasya namani manoharani, which is so attractive to the mind. And not only that, samasta bhaktati vinashanani, they destroy all the distresses of the devotees, And here are some samples. Govinda Damodara Madhaveti.
Yeah, we play that on Krishna launch. Before we start, so this bhajan keeps going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to come Thursday. When does it take place? At the beginning?
So, right before we start the kirtan, like when everyone's coming, we are welcoming people. This goes on in the background.
Now, is it Mukunda Dutt singing? You're not sure?
I think it's some, I don't know.
Off the internet or something.
Some YouTube video. It doesn't look like someone singing traditionally, but more look like the makeover.
Okay, yeah. But it would really be next year if everyone knew the meaning of all the words. Maybe I'll put a few of them into English poetry, then they'll get it. Okay, well, we have a little time. Let's go on. Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam sthavada jangamam chaitra chaitragya sanyogat tadvidhi bharatarshava. O chief of the Bharts, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Purport. Both material nature and the living entity, which were existing before the creation of the cosmos, are explained in this verse. Whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and material nature. There are many manifestations like trees, mountains, and hills which are not moving, and there are many existences which are moving, and all of them are but combinations of material nature and the superior nature, the living entity. Without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. The relationship between material nature and spiritual nature is eternally going on, and this combination is effected by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, He is the controller of both the superior and inferior natures. The material nature is created by Him, and the superior nature is placed in this material nature, and thus all these activities and manifestations take place. So one may ask, okay, whatever you see in existence. So how about that road over there? Is that the combination? Was there a living entity involved in that road?
Yeah.
Who is that?
So everything's vibration. So more materially inclined, but the road is also a part of.
The way I understand it, I may be wrong, is that what do we got? Earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? And mind, intelligence. So all of them have a god behind them. I mean, there's a god of the waters, there's a god of the air, there's a god of the land. Ether. I'm not sure who it is, but there must be. And so we don't see it, but there's a living entity who's in charge of this matter, of this matter, the earth aspect. And so that's how, I see it. And ultimately, Krishna is there in the form of the Supersoul within every atom. So that's a combination. But at one point, Prabhupada said, wherever there's Supersoul, there's also a soul. So, I don't know, dormant. There's also souls lying dormant within matter. Sometimes Prabhupada says, yes, the mountains, they grow, the flying mountains sometimes.
Is it okay to say they have soul?
Keep it within internal, I wouldn't. But I mean, if nothing else, you got the soul there, which is the super soul, who's pure spirit, within the atom. Everything is made of atoms, molecules, so this is a combination. But the whole art and science of bhakti is how to manage this this combination, because we're kind of trapped within the material combination called the body. And the real problem is the subtle body, because that's the one that it keeps us bound up here. The desires in the mind, which are not expunged or purified, and it keeps coming back. So, how to use the facility we have, the ears, the eyes, the senses, the mind. Hare Krishna, welcome. To escape from the thrall or the control of the lower energy. In other words, it's an art and a science. How to use the ears and what to hear so as not to get more entangled, but rather that it can liberate us. That's the first and most important sense that we have to reform. And so that's the whole idea. This building is nothing but a lot of non-moving, earth, there's fire, there's a lot of water now. But it's a special building. There's so many buildings just on this street. There's dwellings, there's some houses. But they're all meant for varieties of sense gratification, material motivation. But this particular building is meant to glorify Krishna. And I'll point out something you may never have noticed. These little, what are they called, friezes that show Krishna's pastimes. Did you ever notice that one where she's binding Krishna? There's something very odd there. Yeah. She's binding him. It's like he ran away, he was naughty, he broke the pot of butter. We had...
Oh yeah, I know the story.
There's a famous pastime like that. Damodar Leela. There's no churning, what do they call it? Yeah, she's not binding him to anything. She's just tying him. Yes. Anyway, that's just one notice. But who pointed that out? I've been here 30 years, I never noticed it. Pradyumna, the boy, he came here, he lived earlier. He had obviously noticed that early on when they opened the temple. But no one else did. It's interesting. Anyway, so everything is now this is again a way of seeing Chaitra. He's back to the theme. What is the Chaitra? What is the know of the field? So it's all just a combination. Tadvidi Bhadatarshaba, Sattvam Stavra Jangam, both in the moving and non-moving. So Prabhupada points that out. This is again how to see the world through the eyes of Bhagavad Gita. All right, one more. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyat svavanashyantam yak pashyati sapashyati. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies and who understands that neither the soul nor the supersoul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees. Purport. Anyone who, by good association, can see three things combined together, the body, the proprietor of the body, or the individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul, is actually in knowledge. Unless one has the association of a real knower of spiritual subjects, one cannot see these three things. Those who do not have such association are ignorant. They simply see the body and they think that when the body is destroyed, everything is finished. But actually it is not so. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and the supersoul exist, and they go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. The Sanskrit word Parameshvara is sometimes translated as the individual soul because the soul is the master of the body, and after destruction of the body he transfers to another form. In that way he is master. But there are others who interpret this Parameshvara to be the supersoul. In either case, both the supersoul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see what is happening. Now, just a note here, and that is that this is like, it's important that we can develop the vision, this whole Shastra Chakshus, the eyes of Shastra. So we're not just seeing things with ordinary vision, or in the way that we may have been trained, in school to see or something. But we're seeing with knowledge of what's really going on in the world. But I would say that in terms of developing bhakti, there's a further step that's also very important, and that is helping others to see. Because after all, the whole thing in bhakti is to develop affection and even love for the Lord. And he makes it very clear that those who are helping others to come to me are the most dear to me. He says at the end here, those who explain the secret to the devotees, they're most dear amongst all. So there's seeing, and then there's helping others to see. And Krishna consciousness involves both. Without that second part, we wouldn't be sitting here. Prabhupada certainly saw everything through the eyes of Shastra, but he also had that urgency of helping others to see that way and be delivered from the thrall and the pains of material consciousness. So that will come in, it's the very existence of this Bhagavad Gita, the way it's put together and throughout. That's the obvious conclusion, is that the real purpose of all this is to, number one, we want to get out of the bondage that we've been in since time immemorial and really taste the nectar of Krishna consciousness again after all these years. But we also want to help others. That's an essential part, to develop that sense of kinship with all souls. And then it becomes, the sense of urgency is really there. Well, every moment counts, because who knows who's passing by who might have taken a book, so I don't waste any time. So that was the kind of urgency Prabhupada had. I was just dipping into some of his letters, to read his letters. And I was reading some letters from 67, 68. Before then, most of his letters are written to people back in India. He's trying to get help. But gradually, as he gets followers and the movement starts going, he's writing to Gargamuni and Brahmananda. And, you see how is the... Brahman saying, I'm really concerned about the building project. There was this whole idea of buying a $200,000 building in Manhattan. The Price affair. I think it was named Price. Or maybe that's the pseudonym. But ultimately, it was a big con game. The guy was conning the devotees out of money. He was cheating. He saw these are easy marks, But Prabhupada wasn't an easy mark. He came back to New York, and he was able to get almost all the money back, because he's. But it's wonderful that, to see how he's encouraging everybody. Every day he's writing letters. This is the main way of communication. It's not like email where you just knock them off and then go out here. But it's, really he's typing and then eventually dictating. And you can see over the years, those letters were so important. Devotees would be in some outpost somewhere in Africa, and they'd get a letter, and it'd be like sharing the letter. They'd merely read the letter, especially those first 3 couples in England. That was their life, blood. Prabhupada was encouraging.
Phone was not accessible that much.
I'm sorry?
In 67, landline was there. Phone.
Yeah, it was so expensive. Just to call, 3 minutes, like $3 every minute, another $1. Prabhupada, really didn't want us to spend money on the phone like that. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.